Hey all, I have a good friend of mine on the show today, Mr. Evan Powell. Evan's background in supply chain is amazing. It's a topic that we haven't had too much of on the Enterprise Excellence podcast so far, but I know this one's going to be a real cracker, give you some really great insights. Supply chain plays a massive part to the performance of a factory, but also, of course, the overall supply of goods and services on time, high percentage of quality to customers. And also within supply chains, there can be huge amounts of waste. And how we actually optimize supply chains, we're going to delve into today, looking at Evan's supply chain mastery concept, which for those that are interested, Evan's running a workshop in Brisbane on the 28th of March. Well worth getting to. If you're interested, just go to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast website, contact us. Also, you can go to the enterpriseexcellencegroup.com.au to be able to find information about the workshop. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the episode. This is recorded in a warehouse with Evan, which you'll see if you're watching YouTube. Alternatively, ignore some of the background noises. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where we share knowledge from global experts in how to create high-performance, agile cultures of continuous improvement and innovation. Cultures where employees wake up smiling and excited to go to work and make a difference. Cultures where leaders feel they have the time to proactively serve the growth of themselves and others.
I'm your host, Brad Jeavons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. By improving our organisations, we create a better future for generations to come. An economy where our children and grandchildren can experience the joy of owning their first home. An environment where they can enjoy holidays on clean beaches and marvel at the beauty of nature. A future where they feel safe, respected, and empowered to make a difference at work, bringing that energy home to their families and communities. This show is proudly brought to you by the Enterprise Excellence Community and Group, which is focused on helping organisations create this better future through this podcast, our community, where you can engage with global experts, tour best practice sites, and also our workshops focused on the most important topics to truly help your organisation improve into the future for those it serves. Visit enterpriseexcellencegroup.com.au to learn more. Welcome to episode 188 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. Today we are thrilled to welcome Mr. Evan Powell to the show. With a career dedicated to supply chain excellence, Evan has collaborated closely with top Australian organisations like Signet and numerous others through his consulting ventures. His deep expertise in operational and supply chain excellence has driven remarkable outcomes. Evan has been able to seamlessly integrate best practices in operational excellence into supply chains. Evan's approach, known as supply chain mastery, distills complex concepts into practical, actionable steps to help organisations optimise inventory, improve planning for levelled operational performance, and enhance delivery outcomes for customers. In partnership with the Enterprise Excellence Group, Evan will be hosting an exclusive one-day workshop in Brisbane on the 28th of March in Australia, which is focused on empowering professionals to master supply chain strategies on how to truly achieve excellence within their supply chains. Today we'll be delving into supply chain mastery, offering invaluable insights to shape a brighter future for every organisation. Evan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for the warm welcome, Brad. It's wonderful to be here and be part of the wider group to talk through inventory and the importance of manage supply chains in the best way possible. So great to be here.
I'm looking forward to getting into the chat. It's such a hot topic. Evan, to start with, mate, why is it important that organisations create a culture of continuous improvement and innovation within their supply chains? It's been known so much within factories, but why is it so important also in inbound and outbound supply chain?
Inventory touches all parts of the business, right? Whether it's the finance team, whether it's your manufacturing team, your warehouse team, it touches everything. So if we're not focusing on continuous improvement in how we're bringing our goods into the business and then how we're planning our product, we're going to create chaos right the way through it. And I think that's what we see in a lot of businesses. From small things, symptoms rise up where stock just arrives, we've got no idea where that is, we're having to run to a 3PL because we've run out of space. It all stems from the same things, that we've got our water levels too high in how we're managing our inventory, and we're not being as optimal as we can to make sure that we're getting the best out of it.
And it's a common tale, and I see it in all my travels, that just the chaos of inventory and the chaos of in supply chains, especially since the COVID era. Mate, what would you say are the key elements of supply chain excellence that organisations need to consider when it comes to actually thinking about making things better?
Yes, I think it's first of all understanding what's the inventory doing within your business. How are you and understanding and taking that state of the nation in terms of what does it look like in today's world. Then you can then start to group that up into what's predictable, and a small amount of items is going to be what's doing most of your work for you and giving you most of the return. There's a high chance those are pretty predictable and pretty consistent and pretty stable each month. And then there's a whole bunch of items as you step through your variable items to your really unpredictable ones in your tail. It's understanding what those all are and then putting a measure in place to adjust for each of those. So it's understanding what the state of the play is, then understanding which items are causing you variance and how do you look to find ways to control the variance. Because at the end of the day, yes, COVID's happened, yes, Ever Givens happened, yes, Houthi rebels happened. Those are the things that are outside of our control, those black swan events. But at the crux of it, most things in our supply chain and our businesses is actually within our control. We don't like to say it is at times, but it really is within our control from how we are managing our business, how we have our sales team engaging with our customers and how we empower them and encourage them to sell. How then that, and if we don't get that right, that can create chaos right the way through our business in terms of then how do we plan, how do we schedule, what work are we saying yes to, through to then how we dispatch our goods. And then obviously then that's a similar relationship with how our purchasing teams are buying product. So it's understanding that all those variables for the most part are within our control, and we want to try and take the peaks and the troughs out of our business so that we operate in a smaller range.
Yeah, nice. So I can see, you're mentioning, look, it's really understanding those different types of inventory you've got. Then it's also looking at how do we treat those. It's also how do we bring sales into the mix, how do we procure, but ultimately saying to create a more leveled outcome.
That's it. And supply chain excellence and supply chain mastery, it's not about the supply chain team owning it. They've got probably the heaviest lifting to happen in that space. But finance are a part of it, marketing, sales, customer service, warehouse, manufacturing, your whole business is part of it. Because at the end of the day, your business is judged by the P&L and the financial results that it's putting out there. But I guess the biggest constraint on how you deliver to that is how well you can get units through your door and how well you manage that throughput. And if you can't manage and control that throughput and can't predict what that throughput's going to look like in next month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or at least have it with a margin of error out that far, you're going to struggle to get those financial results that you need. So it's a whole business focus on how do we make sure that we can get what we need through the business in the best way possible. The end result of it, if we do it well, is that we've got more satisfied customers and the business can then grow organically without those same constraints that we probably had previously.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. And I guess when you think operational enterprise excellence, ultimately it's about flow of value for customers, and leveling even through a factory plays a major part. So.
It's massive because again, if we're not leveling through a factory, we've all been if we're working in manufacturing environments or in a sales environment within a business, whatever part of the business we're touching, you've probably been in a business where we're always late on what we do. We can't get stuff out the door to our customers. We can't grow because we can't get it out the door. And that's often a symptom that we're making the wrong stuff at the wrong time, but it really comes down to we're making the wrong quantity of product at the wrong time. And we're saying yes to work potentially without understanding what the impact is on the current constraints within the business. And this approach is about, we want to say yes to the work, but we want to know what the impact's going to be and how do we take that work and break it apart in a way that we can go about delivering it. So it is all about the customer, and it's all about our people. It's all about making sure that, if we're living in the world of high peaks and low troughs, work's chaos. We're going around firefighting all day, and we've all worked in those roles where this is all about how do we then start to try and take some of that chaos out of the business and make work more predictable for the people within the business, which is back to respect for the people. And that, again, obviously allows business owners and execs to make sure they've got a more predictable outcome that they're getting.
Well, it certainly would be a good thing to seek. I guess everyone's been living in such chaos and barely trying to keep up in recent times. It sounds like supply chain mastery is really a way that they can do that. And a lot of what we're talking about is variability, and variability can lead to crazy waste. I guess stock write-offs, late supplies, impacted customers, all sorts of things. But why is inventory variability such a problem in business right now?
So it really is how we start, and a lot of the times it starts with our costing systems, how we cost product. We all talk economies of scale. There's a fallacy, I think, as far as I'm concerned, with economies of scale, right? Where we can make more of that unit will give us a better cost price and a better sell price that we can offer our customers. There's a point there where that actually starts to break the business. So we then start talking through, it's the law of diminishing returns. If we offer, say, 1 month's worth of pricing for 1 month manufacturing versus 2 months versus 3 months, there's going to be marginal gains that sit in there. But making 3 months worth of stock for some customers is going to cripple and break your business as that steps through, because if you're then talking about maybe taking a production line out for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I was at a customer recently and I went out to the yard. They had 2 40-foot containers there that they were ready to ship. I'd had the meeting pushed back to catch up with them by a week because they were all tied up on this massive order. So I get out there and I have the conversation. Guys, how often does this order come in? Once a year. Now, I like the simple maths here. 2 40-foot containers. If I divide that into quarters, that's a 20-foot container once a quarter. That would then just start to create flow through their business, because the issue that they had is that they tied up a production line for 50 days. 50 days of one production line just working through that particular order. What does that mean for all the other customers that you've got that you're trying to service, unable to service, having to pull that work down to slot that work in? It starts to create chaos. And then we then start to create this boom and bust cycle within the business. That what's our cash flow impact on having to buy material, components, all that work up front 50 days in advance, because that's when we're starting to make the product. And then we're then chasing the invoice on the back end of it. We're talking that cash to cash cycle for that particular order might be 80 or 90 days, depending on the terms with that particular customer. So this is again where it's symptomatic that if we don't manage the inventory and the leveling right in just how we place one order, that's then going to start to create chaos through the business in terms of what we're putting our staff through from a work perspective, how we're scheduling our work, the impact to other customers, and then it manifests itself in a cash flow and a financial problem. So it really, in a lot of ways, just starts at the start, Brad, around how we sell to our customers and how we chase pricing out of our vendors. Because again, in most instances, we obviously want to be doing what we can as supply chain professionals or procurement professionals to be getting the best price possible for the business. But that often comes with larger quantities. Well, there's no point buying that larger quantity if we can't use that within a time that really aligns with the demand out with our customers. So it's all about how do we level what we're bringing in and what we're selling out to our customers as much as possible to keep that as level as we can. And then we can then start working on how do we optimize ordering frequencies, ordering multiples, and ordering patterns just to be more stable and consistent.
Nice. So, mate, with I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there, and they'd understand potentially the concept of more consistent, more frequency of ordering, level down the spikes of what you're doing so you don't take up your warehouse, take up all your cash flow, all the negatives from it. But a lot of people will be thinking, but my products are also variable and also all over the place and customer demand is crazy. How do you actually go about leveling when, I'm sure every company does have crazy varieties of purchase frequencies in many cases.
And this is, we're never going to get everything, but again, we've got to be, if we're getting 80%, we're doing a lot of things right. Yeah. So, and back on that 80%. So this is again where, how I'd approach this is we then go ABC analysis or a Pareto analysis of all of your inventory in your business. Now this can be done. The beauty of that model is it ticks everything, right? It ticks your cost of goods, so your items that you're manufacturing, you're selling out to customers, but you can also be doing that on all your inbound purchases as well if you're manufacturing raw materials and everything else there. And it's all about how do we then, if you're talking the inbound, what options have we got to try and consolidate down what we're doing? Can we take some of the exceptions and the variables and the individual, individual specific items that we've got to do it that particular way? Well, can we make it a standard size, which then means we can hit another 5 bill of materials with that one particular item, with what we're selling out to our customers? Let's start to understand that and then break that down. So if we then talk about 80-20, what we're going to see in most instances is that 50% of your revenue or your cost of goods is going to be generated from 5% of items. That's a really small amount that's generating a huge amount of work for your business. And then we see that 50% of your SKUs is going to be taking up 1% of your revenue. There's a massive tail that's disproportionate there to that front end. So that's where we can then start to really narrow in our focus. And then if we then start saying, well, where's our biggest bang for our buck? Because not all problems are created equal. Not all inventory is created equal. Not all people are created equal. We start focusing on, well, the biggest bang for our buck is let's start to really work on the stuff that's making us money today. And make sure that's as optimized and in control as possible. And what we often see through that is those items have got less variability in them than those further down the line. And we might be talking, and now we're talking variability, let's talk percentages, right? So I might be selling 1,000 units of one of those items on a monthly basis. If I had a new customer on board and they take 100 units a month that I hadn't forecast, that's a 10% movement. If we compare it down the line to an item that we're selling 10 of a month, if I have another customer come in to want 10 units a month, I've now doubled that usage. The impact in terms of how that planning is going to be massive on that. But what we can start to do then is those items that we can predict and we know what we're happening is obviously we want to be making sure that we're collaborating really closely with our customers and our sales teams on how do we forecast and getting the right data in there. We can then start looking at, well, how do we manage safety stock? And if we put a blanket rule across the board that we want to hold 1 month's worth of safety stock, well, if we know we're going to do 1,000 units a month, we can actually start to lower that level down and reinvest that money in the safety stock then for the other items further down there. So this is not just we want to reduce all inventory. There's going to be cases where we need to bring it up because that will help us manage the variability within our business.
And I can really hear, mate, you're saying, look, those high volume items that are typically consistent demand by customers, you can really look to, level them and order them more frequently, bring their volumes down, and invest then on potentially you might need more safety stock in your odd items, those small items that are more sporadic. But in a previous life, when I led a business, we actually took those really, like you said, the 50% of items that just give you a small percentage of turnover, we actually took them to order just in time. So collaborated with customers for them to order on us with a bit more lead time, so that then we would bring it in and supply. Is that a legitimate strategy for some people?
It totally is. And I think it's as you start looking down and you see that list of items, you can start looking at, well, what do we do with it? Are they, first of all, are they actually complementary to our core product and our business, and do we want to be in those products? If they're not, kill them, take them out. And look to work with your customers on trying to get them through onto alternate lines there that have got that volume there. It might be that you're selling it a 250 ml bottle compared to a 500 ml bottle. Well, can we get them onto the 500 ml bottle? What's the requirement for that? Because with those smaller items, we're creating exceptions right the way through our business because we've probably got to bring in our own different bill of material, our own different consumables for that particular item, so on and so forth. So first of all, you start with and go, are they paying their way, and do we want to continue to carry them? Then secondly, if we want to continue carrying them to some capacity, I think that we start working with our customers and our vendors on, well, you're going to be holding more stock than what we are because you've probably got a bigger market of it in some ways. Can we look to then start to, have you guys either ship directly to our customers, and we then look to manage our customers in some ways. So that then starts to take waste out of our business, and then we're not focusing on the tail as being problems. We can then spend a lot of time and energy focusing on the core parts of our business day in, day out, past any optimization of this. To make sure that we continually, yield the best outcomes that we're looking to get.
Well, certainly in those top high volume, consistent demand items, that's where the money is typically. But with us too, those tail items, they were short life items. So it was just a beautiful thing. The customer got extra life out of the product also on their shelf, which was an amazing benefit.
And often with all those things, there's win-win-win benefits. You start looking at some things, and if you can frame it a way where there's a win for your business, there's a good chance it's actually going to be a win for others as well, as long as you're talking through and saying that the right way. And if we come back to this whole, what's the importance of supply chain mastery? We talk customer, we talk people within your business. The other beneficiary really this is the planet. I don't know the exact stats on it, but how many tons of landfill are we putting in waste each year from food overproduction, food shortages because we're not managing the right way, expiry dates where it comes to pinch, it's massive. And that's just in food, which is what we see. We don't see the cardboard boxes that sit within a warehouse like this one that end up in landfill on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis because it's just not selling and it's been overproduced. So it really comes back down to then if we're living our values and trying to be good custodians of the planet, we want to. There's a real vested interest for us all to make sure that we're managing our inventory and our supply chains in a better way. It's
a massive win-win, isn't it? Because that write-off, which I've got to admit, before we did this supply chain mastery analysis, that you're training on, there was a lot going to landfill, and it was a chemical, so toxic chemical. So even from our position, there was a lot going to landfill. I'm sure our customers were putting a lot to landfill.
And there's other examples here as well where if we've got a standard item that you've got, and then you might have 50 different customers buying a slightly different version of that item, a millimetre thicker, a millimetre thinner, a millimetre longer, a millimetre shorter. Have the conversation with those customers and the business and say, do we want to be entertaining that, or is there a real opportunity to look to put that on a standard item, which should offer the customer better pricing? It offers you better volume through your business. And if we come back to this benefits to the business, think of all the make-ready waste that you've been just taking out of your business completely, because you're then able to consolidate it all through one make-ready of one item rather than having 50 items with 50 individual make-readies.
Amazing. Evan, I want to come to finished goods first and the finished goods warehouse, and then we'll come back to raw materials into a factory. When it comes to this concept of really starting to differentiate your inventory and then treat it differently, that high volume, consistent demand, and the low items, what's some of the best practices that you talk about in supply chain mastery when it comes to then how do you set up your warehouse and actually run your warehouse to ensure amazing outcomes for people and customers?
Yep, so if we're talking really just warehouse layout, what we want to make sure that we're doing is understanding which items are our fast turning items. And one of my favourite go-to things is just doing a heat map of your warehouse is insightful. Where's your dispatch area? Where's your receiving area? And then how many times are you going to individual bins on the course of a day, a week, a quarter? And you'll start to see, I guess, a tapestry of, and it is going to start out as being a tapestry, right, where you've not slotted that in the right way. What we want to bring is I guess, all of our reds, all the fast-moving stuff, down to, I guess, the common place. Now, up to you to decide if you want that to be at a receiving end or a dispatch end. I'd be recommending you want that at a dispatch side of things. And you want to, I guess, to minimise that travel for all those fast-moving items. That's a great spot to start. The next thing, if we then start to get down a level further into that, is it's going to be, well, what items are sold together? I'm always going to sell item A with item B. And it's going to be things that you don't necessarily think. Is a tape gun always going to be sold with tape? There's a good chance of that. Let's look to hold those together. Staplers and staples. It's going to be things like that which you can start looking at, and I'm sure there's much better examples than just
I've actually
the stationary side of things.
I've actually had a good example through my time working with Amazon, which was Bridget Jones's diary book with a particular chocolate. I can't remember what the chocolate was, but there was a family that they co-located, and it was a particular book with a particular chocolate, which is quite amazing.
Goes together. Maybe you get the lingerie as well. Who knows?
Yes.
But that's really, I guess, that next step is start. Once you've got, I guess, that high level heat map done of your warehouse, and you start looking for opportunities to then start to step into, well, what can we do to look at those complementary products? That ticks a lot of the boxes from a dispatch side of things. You can then start getting into, weights, volumes, how you pick, how you manage your orders, and I mean that's a whole bigger conversation to get into.
But I guess the technology out there, there's so many options for error proofing and picking, isn't there? And I think, you and I have been involved in some pretty crazy ones over the years, just using graphics and different smart ways to enable rapid, easy picking and consolidation at the point of dispatch. Yeah. Exactly.
So I think, you're making sure that, the warehouse management system or the ERP system that you're using, that you've got a built-in validation check that you've got there as a first and foremost thing, because, you want to minimize the likelihood of quality issues. And that just creates downstream problems for everyone. Getting into cycle counting is critical for that. Now, I've not got, I guess a perfect case. I've got the perfect world example of, I guess, how this needs to work. I've not got the smarts on how this works in action yet. I haven't got a practical example of it. So if there is one out there, I'd love to hear it. But in my mind, when's the best time to count a bin? It's when it's empty. There's
or near empty.
And then it's when it's near empty. So
less to count, less time.
If there's way, and conventional stock takes take place on an annual basis or a biannual basis, and they'll shut the warehouse down for a day or 2 days. Cycle counting starts to get us into a routine. It's still a dedicated, discrete process that we're going to go through. All the bins on a pattern, on a weekly, daily sort of basis to set that through. If there's ways that you can then start to integrate your counting process in with your picking process, you're doing it at that time, and that can then also allow you, if you've got the smarts in the system, you're counting it when it gets to a trigger that should be maybe below, say, 3 cartons. Depending on that, that's also going to prompt any replenishment activity that needs to happen and other things that need to happen, so that all your downstream activity can just start to take place as it needs to take place.
It's amazing, and I guess I just love the way that your mind works, mate, where you're thinking about every element of waste and optimization within a supply chain, which I know is what people are going to learn on going through your supply chain mastery workshops and the consulting you do. And I think too, for listeners, there's been some really cool case examples of what Evan and myself in the past have come across too, like General Motors, using graphic and picking to graphic and consolidating to graphic. That's now gone global throughout the world. Toyota with Project Taipan that happened in Australia to optimize their supply chain, gone global, and so many case examples.
It is, and I mean, we can talk, a lot of, we often, in today's world, we always jump to the system solution. Most of this is just process. And just look at our processes and people and process, right? And even, one of the biggest returns I got out of it from a warehouse perspective was around our receiving teams and the way that our bin ranking worked. So, and how it was, it was a directed put away system, where it was putting away to. Often it was putting away to the highest bin before, say, a C-level pick was going all the way to the top. You start doing the time and motion work on that, we're losing 15 to 20 seconds per put away to get up top with a high likelihood of risk, because operators can, their visibility and also racking stability. We changed it so that we drove everything to the C level first, so we filled the C levels through the business first, that went to the D level, then it went to the E level, which then started to really compound to quite a massive time saving at the end of the year, because if we're talking, hundreds and thousands of pallet movements a day, that really starts to generate quite a significant time saving that we create.
I think too, mate, like you talk about the start, just using that high, mid, low analysis, and you start to order your high volume more frequently, which naturally just tanks your inventory, drops your inventory. It then gives you the space to actually do this smart type of work. Whereas when people aren't doing this type of supply chain mastery efforts, they're like, I don't have the space to do it. No, well, there's a simple way you can create space, which we've been talking about.
What we need to be doing, right? And it's how to, and the challenge, I guess, with any of this, and if all our problem is that we've got a tip of dollars and inventory tied up in the slow moving stuff, it's going to take time to get through. So the challenge, I guess, with supply chain mastery, supply chain excellence is, in a lot of ways, unfortunately, there's not a huge amount of quick wins. We can make quick wins in a system really quickly, but it's going to take, I guess, a process of days and weeks and months, I guess, of condition monitoring to make sure that, and that we are seeing the returns that we need to see out of it. Where we also get lost, I think, in a lot of ways with conventional changes to how we're managing our supply chains is our business grows, our business changes over time. We add items, we add SKUs. It gets lost in the chaos of all that. What we need to be doing is, I guess, taking a point of truth at a point in time, so let's say today, and manage that list. Control that list and make sure that we're getting the value out of that list and do some small experiments on that. Because if we start adding new items into it, all of a sudden we'd run the same report next quarter. This item's up the top. Well, where's that come from? We all focus on that and not actually tracking the wins that we're getting here. So the importance in some ways of a static list that we can manage and classifying our reports in the best way gives us the best results, because we're working with the same information or the same set of items that we're looking to control. I
know, Evan, a key part of supply chain mastery is that once you've got this sort of, you've optimized, you've leveled your high volume items and you're starting to create more warehouse space, and then you're doing a different strategy with your low volume, and then you've got your warehouse systems really streamlined with where you're locating things and how you're binning. I know that then a real key part is being able to keep checking it's in control and having a rapid system to act if you see something flex. Like, I guess it could happen anywhere, couldn't it? New item comes in, it rapidly becomes a high volume item. You have a high volume item that we lose business on, it could drop. What is that step that people need to consider with creating visual scoreboards and visual data that they can actually see at any moment what's going on?
So it's understanding, and I think anything measures, we start to get into visual measures, it's coming back to, what's our objective and what are the results that we're looking to chase out of this. So it might be that we're looking to bring our inventory down, it might be that we're looking to drive our back orders down or increase, the satisfaction out to customers.
Yeah, delivery performance.
The delivery performance. From there, we then step down and go, well, what are the things that drive this? So, I think back orders is a really good one to drive. So if a back order happens today, there's very little I can do about it other than get the stock here to get out to the customer. But I can then control what am I out of stocks. So what's out of stock today? It might not have caused a back order yet, but we've run out of stock of that. Then more importantly, what am I expected out of stocks? And then we've had the team focusing on their behaviours and activities around, let's drive our expected out of stocks down and jump on those early. Now, inventory is easy. We fix it, we buy more. Well, that just raises the water level back up. It's as those expected out of stocks come up, we want to do, I guess, a quick, rapid root cause analysis. I guess it's a team on that to go through and say, well, what's caused that? Is that because it's been and out of stocks really come up for one of a handful of reasons. We've sold more than what we forecast to sell. Our vendors not performed, or we've purchased the product late, or maybe there's a force majeure event where I guess the product's late in. But we can group that in with, I guess, the vendor performance, I guess, to some capacity, right? Where it's a delay in getting it. We've sold more, or we've not managed it and we've not seen it. So I think it's taking that time to understand, well, what's caused this? And then how can we then control that variability? If we've had a new customer come on board or a certain customer's ramped up, let's have the conversation with them. Mr. Customer, what's happened here? let's understand, and this comes back to then that this is not just a supply chain only problem. It's a full business problem that we want to look at. How do we enable that and encourage those conversations and incentivize those conversations to happening?
And I guess with that, that's where really running an effective sales and operation planning type collaborative meeting or integrated business planning type meeting cadence and data is very important.
Correct, and everyone's seeing the benefit and the value out of it. And a big change that needs to happen here is, the business. If we come back to this early point that we sort of made around, the business's ability to put throughput through the business is its capacity, and it is its constraint. Taking that language from sales and setting sales budgets to now let's look at unit budgets and trying to find that mirror between the two is a critical part of what we need to be doing there.
That's great. And mate, one thing I want to quiz you on, which, with data and the way that you treat variances that come through, in a way you're talking about acting a little bit slower, get to the root cause, understand the patterns, and then make a decision, right? But I see in today's world in supply chain, we just see something and we buy more, or we see something and we pull back the ordering volume. It's like we see something, we act, we see something, we act, which I guess in today's world is what everyone teaches us, but it seems to just amplify the bullwhip effect where people can just end up in this reactive chaos, which is counterintuitive to the way we roll nowadays, isn't it? It's like see something on social media and react to it. But it's actually in supply chain, you got to think about it.
You do, you got to take the time to pause because, we live in this world of just in case, just in time. And if we, and I've done it countless times, I'm sure we all have, where, you're looking at some data that's there and you go, okay, I'll go buy some. And then before you know it, 3 minutes later, you're looking at an obsolete inventory report going, who bought that? Oh, it was me. Why hasn't it turned? Or you got stuck in the whole, it's going to sell, it's going to sell, it's going to sell, which we've all heard, and then it doesn't sell. So it's really taking the time to pause to make sure that we make the right decision and get as much information as we can do. Because once we've placed that purchase order, once we've paid that vendor, that cash is no longer cash anymore. It's I don't like to say it's an asset because it's not an asset. Inventory is a liability that's sitting there and depreciating with what is doing sitting on the shelf. So it's really being very mindful, very focused on making sure that we take our time to pause and just get all the available information. And if we're not comfortable with it, have the right to sort of step back. And that's part of the business mentality around that sales and operations or that integrated business planning process needs to be that, guys, we're not going to put pressure on some of these decisions if we don't have the data there to back it up. Because I think in organisations that aren't as mature as what we need them to be, it will be that just buy it now, just buy it now, just buy it now mentality.
They're living in chaos. And how often do you see, even on a high volume item, you'll be watching like a statistical quality control chart or an upper and lower volume limit, and you see that spike go down, where someone's drawn off more inventory than is expected. But then you see it rebound back just the same, that it goes back above limit the next week.
Correct. Well,
and then all of a sudden it's back on even keel again. Whereas if you reacted and ordered, all of a sudden you're out of stock and you're in this bouncing around position, or you're overstocked.
And it's being dynamic. And this is again where, from a planning point of view, one thing that we need to look in terms of, I guess, is how we plan. And, I think one of the problems I think a lot of businesses run into is that min-max is a great system in terms of planning and replenishment. But if we're growing in our items and we've set our reorder point at 100 and we're going to buy 200 at a time, because we're maybe, selling, 50 units a month or whatnot, or 100 units a month, if we bring on a new customer that's going to take 100 units a month, we're going to run ourselves out of stock all the time. And the challenge with min-max inventory quantities is that we need somebody there consistently managing and measuring what those volumes need to be on a regular basis to make sure that it's as current as what we can do. Most systems support it, but if they don't support it, I'd recommend, I guess, doing the analysis outside of your ERP system or whatnot, and bring it out and trying to look at what are our min-max days based on, say, the last 3 months worth of usage. If you've got a more seasonal product, then look over a 12-month period and the seasonality spikes. But the last 3 months is a really good starting point and what I'd be doing for most of what I do, because it's most current and most up to date for businesses that are growing. And take that usage out and then convert that into how many days worth of supply do we need. And if you've got those controls in there where you're saying that I need a month's worth of safety stock or 14 days worth of safety stock, I understand what my vendor lead time is going to be and how often do I want to buy from that vendor because I can make that quantity. That's going to make your life of changing inventory growth and reduction based on whether that item is growing or declining in its sales so much easier because we're controlling it that way. And then to that point, when we're planning our inventory, it really comes down to, it's all about looking at from a horizon period out from today's date. What goes into that? What's our vendor lead time? We have to know that, and we have to manage for that. How often do we want to buy from that vendor? Now that's often going to be dictated by what our terms are with the vendor. How often can we meet the vendor order minimum? Now that might be a 20-foot container. It might be a certain amount of spend. But we want to make sure that at least we're checking from that vendor on a regular basis. And if we're not doing that and we're going past that, that's going to start to cause chaos back on our business as well. And we need to understand, does that minimum fit with what our business needs it to be? And then thirdly, we then have our safety stock. How many days or quantity of safety stock do we want that to be? And those three numbers can come together where we add our lead time plus our review cycle plus our safety stock, looks out over a horizon date, and we want to be then looking, saying, what's our inventory going to be at that point in time? So let's say it takes 30 days for stock to get here. We're going to buy from that vendor once a month, that's 30 days, and we want to hold 30 days worth of safety stock. That's looking at over 90 days. From there, the equation's quite a simple one where we're looking at what's my inventory on hand today, what's my forecast of what I expect to sell, so that's going to bring my inventory down, and what are my inbound purchase orders coming in over that time. That's going to give me a point in 90 days' time of, am I in positive or negative inventory? If it's negative, I buy. If it's positive, I can watch and I can manage and I can step that through as I go through. But that really comes down to the importance of accurate data around inbound orders, the importance of accurate forecasts and trying to control our forecasts, and then I guess that using that safety stock as a buffer. And safety stock is an insurance policy, and it's making sure that we're not over-insuring ourselves on things that we can predict and we know what's going to happen, and putting the right coverage of insurance on those that are a little bit riskier.
Yeah, like you were mentioning earlier in this episode, when you've got your high volume consistent demand, you can really look to, optimize that, even order more frequently, bring down your safety and just have that consistent flow of inventory coming in. But it's your more erratic items are the ones you got to figure out exactly how you're physically going to manage it using that system.
Exactly. And if we then talk through then that more regular ordering type thing, often we sort of see that we're not ordering from, we might order from the vendor once every 3 months, once every 6 months. Well, it's a boom or bust cycle that we're creating ourselves. Because what happens if you say yes to an order and that you're not buying from that vendor for another month, and then it's a 3-month lead time? You're just creating chaos through it. Whereas if we can get ourselves in this, we're getting small regular orders in frequently, that just means there's predictable stock turning. We just keep the engines turning consistently.
You're only out of stock for less time?
For a smaller amount of time. Yeah. And we can be more dynamic with ramping up on our vendors. Because if we don't control that, how often do we have it where we then go, we might be ordering 100 units a month from our vendor. We then say yes to a massive order of 1,000 that we've promised that we're going to get to the customer in 2 weeks. Well, it's caused chaos in their business because now they can't make it and they're saying it's going to be a month till we get that out to them. So we're going to go, well, we've committed to this customer, we're going to go to a different vendor, we're causing the chaos in their supply chain. It starts to create chaos all the way through it, whereas if we can take that time to slow it down and have the conversation with the customer about how do we manage the supply and the smoothness out to them, how do we manage to smooth it upstream, that's going to make us a much better company for us all to deal with, and we're not pissing our vendors off, and we're doing what we say we're going to do for our customers.
It's a win-win all around. And I know, and with supply chain mastery, you've got a structured process that you can teach people on how to go through these steps and actually work to create, basically amazing outcomes. If we come back now, mate, to using these techniques to actually plan for a factory, what benefits are there in taking the same concept with raw materials, where you're looking at your high volume consistent demand and then maybe bringing that in more frequently and leveling that out, and then you're taking different tactics for your mid and your low volume variable items?
So if you're manufacturing items that are stocked items, or even a percentage of what you're doing is stocked items, you've got in a lot of ways full control over how you plan and how you do what you do. Now, Brad, what's something that you do every day?
Do every day.
It'd
be eat breakfast.
And you prep, okay, let's say you're buttering your toast. You're probably pretty good at buttering your toast.
Yes.
What happens when you go make your Christmas dinner once a year? So you're doing the whole family catering for Christmas.
Oh, yes. Chaos.
You're having to check recipes, check ingredients.
Buy big.
Yeah. It's complete chaos, right? And it slows everyone down. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Whereas making your toast each morning, it just happens.
Yeah, it does. Without even thinking about it.
The benefit of, I guess, approaching things this way is if we talk from a stock line side of things, or even customers that we've got a really strong relationship with, that we know that order's going to come in once a quarter. Let's say, Mr. Customer, can we talk about doing that once a month? Because if we do things regularly, we get better at doing it. And if you're working on a multi-shift operation, it might be day shift doing it this time. If you're making that product once every 3 months, once every 6 months, day shift's done the setup this time. Took them a while to do it. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't recall what we did last time. The machine wasn't playing quite right. Next time night shift's got it, they might be on leave, somebody else is stepping in for it. It might be 12 months till our operator is seeing that job come up and that make ready for that job come up again. Whereas if we can say, let's look at making those big orders monthly, fortnightly, well, our make ready time should get better because we're doing it frequently, and we want to then start to empower and get our operators thinking about, let's get this going as quickly as we can each time. We're used to it. What we can then do with that is our operators are more in tune with it, but our schedulers are more in tune with it as well. They can start looking at a set schedule. And the great thing that I love about stockline inventory, and not everything can be stockline, but if we're then managing customer stockline or what we're choosing to put into stock, or thinking about what we're likely to sell and choosing to stock it to a capacity ahead of time, we can then start to set our schedule for the month. And if we're setting our schedule and we're controlling that, we then know how much excess capacity we've got that we can fill with custom or made to order items. And that then starts to really give us full control over what we're doing in our business. So we should be getting better and faster at making those jobs that we're doing regularly because we're practicing them more often. And we've got a set schedule which says we're going to make this month. Sales, this is what you can go about to sell. And we might be at capacity this month or next month, but we've got an opening up here. It starts to give this business much more predictable control and focus on what we can then start to do with, getting a return out of our most important assets.
I love this concept, and especially when it comes into operational excellence, because it creates that pattern or that pattern production, isn't it? Which you can do everything with, can't you? You can then schedule when you're going to do your maintenance. If you look at what is happening around, like what Alex Teo is talking about now with total productive and predictive maintenance, you can start to actually plan that in, optimize your changeover sequences by actually creating that right pattern. It's huge, isn't it?
You can find time to train your operators. Everyone complains they've not got time for training, not got time to step off the presses, not got time for the development. Maintenance is a massive thing to get across. That if we're, if we are not finding that time to set a schedule to allow for maintenance, we're setting ourselves up for failure with what we're going to do, because we're going to be living from breakdown to breakdown, and that's just going to cripple the factory for an extended period of time. Probably because we've got then overloading, machines that can't get through the work that we need to get through because we haven't leveled it out. So find that time to set in that schedule that maintenance has to be happening, sets us up for success.
And I know it might sound like utopia to our listeners or some of our listeners, but it's achievable, isn't it? Like you and I have seen it so many times before that you take this planning approach, you start to create a pattern to the way that you produce, you then bolt in the critical things like maintenance and training and all that other good stuff, and productivity goes through the roof. Everything just starts to fall into place. It's nearly a silver bullet for breaking out of the whirlwind of chaos, isn't it?
It is, and listen, you're never gonna. We are talking utopia, we are talking perfectionism and whatnot, but why shouldn't our standards be that high? And we're not going to control everything, but that's part of the joy of chasing perfectionism, is you're never going to quite get there.
Yeah.
But it's picking and choosing where are those low-hanging fruit, those opportunities, and saying that, like I said, inventory is a full business impact. We don't look at it that way, we don't treat it that way, but we've got to start thinking of it as something that impacts every part of our business. It impacts, overtime, it impacts our staff, it impacts our space. So much cost within a business, and it impacts, most importantly, it impacts our customers, because if we aren't keeping our customers happy, we haven't got a business. So it's right the way through that we need to be looking to try and chase closer towards that improved outcome.
I can see. And there is supply chain mastery covers everything, but a big part of it is how we plan and the logic we use around planning, which you've mentioned, incorporates heavily the concepts of leveling, especially in a factory, creating pattern production. But then also what you mentioned, the way that we plan a warehouse and the way that we plan the process to work around that. But how can people reach out and get onto one of these workshops that are coming up, like this one on the 28th of March in Brisbane, or others in the future?
Yep, so reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, so please find me, Evan Powell, on LinkedIn. Reach out to me, message me through that. Otherwise, I think we're setting up, we've got a landing page coming up that we'll be sharing, I guess, in the show notes for this.
Yeah,
so
on the Enterprise Excellence Group, everyone. So you can go to enterpriseexcellencegroup.com.au and you'll see the workshops there. So really great working with you on this one, mate. I guess it's, I know the benefits that can happen, and I think even the simplest piece of just helping people have less stressful lives in supply chains at the moment has got a good cause.
It's admirable there, and that's it. We won't we can't control for a COVID, we can't control for the Ever Given and whatnot. But again, if we aren't putting 20 small fires in our team's heads, then they can just deal on one big one. We've come a long way from, I guess, what we would have otherwise, right?
It's amazing. Well, Evan, thanks for everything you have done, mate, and you'll continue to do to just help us take the noise out of supply chains and create amazing outcomes like reduce waste, reduce costs, create flow for staff, all that comes from it. And I'm really looking forward to this workshop on the 28th of March and the other ones that you run going forward.
Yeah, brilliant, Brad. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to the audience for listening. And I hope you find it insightful. It is utopia, but again, I get such a passion, such a kick out of helping businesses, tweak and change the way that they're working and operating. And the outcomes are endless in a lot of ways, right? So thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Brad, and for all the work that you've done, supporting us to get to this point.
Cheers. Great. Thanks, everyone. Everyone, like that was such a great episode, and I really gained so much insight from it. To gain more, again, go to Evan on LinkedIn, Evan Powell, or go to the enterpriseexcellence.group.com.au website and look up under workshops. You'll be able to gain some additional information there. There were two key takeaways for me from this episode. Firstly is just the simplicity of the model. It doesn't require massive investment, doesn't require huge technology. It's just about planning using some best practice concepts to really allow you to optimize your whole supply chain, but also back to the factory. If you are a supply chain leading raw material into a factory, which is a great outcome. The second key insight for me was what you can then do with that, the additional benefits you can start bolting in, like Evan mentioned, unique picking concepts, unique cycle counting type concepts, the way that we integrate our maintenance and our training into a patterned production in factories. There's just so much uplift, and I'm really looking forward to being part of that workshop myself and learning the steps that Evan's got in his supply chain mastery model. And just thanks again, Evan, for all you have done and continue to do to help us create a better future. Okay, bye listeners, bye for now.